if I saw another day, only to scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, thinking up about the same mistake. Darling, when you go away, it won't be as simple for you.
Yo guys, it is Old Man G here, RDS here, and I'm joined once again by the amazing Tom the journalist. We're not actually talking Takeover. We're not actually talking sales Takeover today. Surprisingly enough, we're not actually. We're here to talk about transfer news. So before we get into it, guys, if you are new to the channel, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter, United X, and smash the notification button. Play this Manchester United news, and more importantly, go and check out Tom's channel as well. Make sure you check out Tom's Twitter as well, and please just sort of support him and follow him on Twitter. So because he's a very good friend of mine, he's been very helpful with this whole takeover nonsense. But we are here to talk transfer news. Obviously, we're going to be talking about ONANA being the deal to United being quite close. We're going to be talking about Rasmus Hojlund and the bid in for around that, and any obviously translated stuff. If you do have questions, it is a Friday night in the UK anyway, to be chilled and stuff like that. So we want to give a kind of relaxed setting. So guys, just relax. You know, I'd even be on camera myself, but I am absolutely exhausted and knackered. And these late night shows are good for me to just unwind at home and just interact with the community of you guys and just have a chill time. So we're going to hopefully have a chill time, as well as discussing sort of transfer news and stuff like that as well, you know. So, and just look in the chat, shout everyone in the chat. Shout out to who we got. Lucky Singh, shout out to him, doing well. Shout out to Stephanie Griff, always good to see you. Saiwan Singh is in the chat as well. Matty, shout out to Matty and David T as well. And always shout out to people who are watching on Facebook as well. Sunday watching on Facebook. Thank you very much for those watching on Facebook as well. Appreciate it. So let's get into it, guys. Onana to United, deal done. Tom Buddy, could you give us a bit of an update regarding the Onana deal to United? Obviously, Fabrizio, the biggest guys have said that literally is essentially probably a matter of, you know, maybe hours, possibly days, you know, that this is going to sort of be confirmed. Like, can you give us a bit more information about it, mate?
Well, the expectation is that Andre Onana the deal and everything should be, you know, wrapped up by next week. That's the theory of many, and from what close sources out of Italy have insisted all the way through, is that Inter Milan have always insisted that they need to sell big players this summer. They had interest in Nicole Barella from Newcastle at the time, and Newcastle didn't follow up on the interest there, and they went for Tonali instead as a midfielder option. So when Manchester United contacted them in terms of their interest in Onana, it was, you know, welcoming from Manchester United to have that interest in Onana, based upon the Inter Milan need the finances to run the football club. And the debts that they have against the club at the moment in time, with the sort of financial trouble that they have, they need to offload a couple of players, and Onana is one of their most valuable assets that they can get financing for. And, you know, in terms of the interest, you have an interest from another European big club in Manchester United, who are in the market for, you know, a number one goalkeeper. So in terms of the Onana deal, the terms around his contract, if he was to come to Manchester United, from the hearing, is that it'll be a 4-year deal with an option of a further year. So basically a 5-year package deal,
Okay.
basically similar to what a lot of players normally get. Sometimes it's 4+1, or in say the Mason Mount case deal, it was 5+1. So it's different in that case. And the fee that Inter have always wanted throughout is they wanted 60 million euros, and euros coming back to that, it roughly works out around about 52.5 million pounds, around that ballpark figure. If Manchester United jumped over the 50 million pound barrier, it would provoke Inter to selling. And any offer that United have put in, Inter have thoroughly gone through, not only due to the financial constraints that they're under themselves, but also they're wanting to finance a deal for Romelu Lukaku. So the more money that they can get out of the Andre Onana deal, the better. And setting that evaluation there, they think that a similar evaluation, if they get a lot of the money up front from Manchester United as opposed to add-ons, then they can go and put in a good case to go and bid for Lukaku from Chelsea. So in terms of the whole agreement, Erik ten Hag, I think it's very clear. He's worked with the player before, and he would love to reunite with Andre Onana at Old Trafford. And Onana is the exact same thing. As soon as he heard Manchester United's interest in him, it was become very clear that, look, if both clubs can agree a fee for me, I'm more than happy to move to Old Trafford and be the number one goalkeeper. And in terms of the overall deal, it's accelerated based upon the Inter Milan and Manchester United have good working relations from when Manchester United actually sold Romelu Lukaku to Inter Milan. In I can't remember the actual figure. It was upwards of over 70 million. I think it was around 70 million euros, or just below that or above that. And the working relationship that they worked on from that deal has always stood since then. And Inter Milan are still paying off, that transfer fee from Romelu Lukaku when they bought him, still to this day. So there is that working relationship there, not only due to payments, but also due to a good understanding between the two clubs when they've worked on previous deals with players. And as I say, with Onana, he would more than happily come to Manchester United should both clubs agree on the fee. And United have already put in 2 offers for which Inter Milan rejected, and they said, look, we want a bit more money up front in terms of the package deal. And as I say, if Manchester United offered them upwards of, if they did a deal, £45 million up front and do 15 million, in add-ons, or 5 million in add-ons, something like that. If a package in total, inclusive of add-ons, come to 50 million, and it breaks near to the 60 million euro barrier for Inter Milan, I don't see how they can turn it down. And at the end of the day, it gives them the financing to go and pursue some of their own targets in the transfer market.
I mean, that's a fair point from the perspective, because I didn't actually think about how Lukaku was going to sort of fit into this, but that's a valid point, because I mean, I think Inter Milan is still paying United for Lukaku, actually, for the way that the Storms are sort of going. But yeah, I mean, they probably want to find a way to sign Lukaku, and if they can get 50 million, 55 million for him, and then maybe make 1 or 2 other sales, as Inter Milan will do, then that probably strengthens them to get Lukaku. I would be very surprised if Chelsea wants 100 million for Lukaku. That's just not going to happen. Although Todd B is getting a bit brash, but I mean, come on, bro. So if they can sell him for anywhere between, to be honest, Lukaku is probably only worth somewhere between 50. Lukaku and Onana probably worth about the same. Lukaku, maybe we 60 million for him. So I think Chelsea would be pushing it if they want anything above 70 million for Lukaku personally. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And obviously, it looks like things will be close to being agreed as well. I mean, from your perspective, how do you see Ten Hag? Because obviously Onana was with, and there's this interesting trend of Ten Hag signing players that he knows or he's worked with before, which is quite fascinating, isn't it? So it's like, oh yeah, Onana, who also worked with Ajax. So do you? I mean, Matty asked. It says a good interesting. Funny thing is that they still pay United Lukaku and they want to buy him. It's like, I know. It's weird, that, isn't it? So it's very, they're still paying us for him, but then obviously in that time they sold him to Chelsea, and then Chelsea gave them 100 million for him. But then it's strange. It's strange.
It's massive.
United won on, yeah, exactly, and I think he will be ready. But yeah, how do you feel that, Tom? You feel that Onana will actually work in the system? How do you think he'll for us?
I think it gives a different dimension to the game, and we've seen goalkeepers come from abroad to other top English flight clubs, and the success that they've then had, and how a goalkeeper can revolutionise the way that you play. Take Alisson, for example, coming from Roma to Liverpool, and how that impacted their squad just as much as they brought in Van Dijk. You can say the same thing for Edison, the passing angles that he gives the team, and the comfortableness on the ball, so that his team can play in the opposition half, knowing that the goalkeeper is going to be behind them to back them up and cover for it. It gives Manchester United something that they probably lacked last season, which was the confidence in the goalkeeper that was behind them. As much as David De Gea got the Golden Glove. Golden Glove's always referred to in football as it's a defensive effort, not just a goalkeeping effort. And I think really from a lot of the games that Man United played, especially away from home, where they nicked the 1-0s or, had to fight rough and tough in some games to get the results that they did, I think, the defence was just as much, in terms of awards as David De Gea was in terms of getting the Golden Glove. And in terms of Onana, I mean, it's clear as day, in my personal opinion anyway, I think him and Edison, it's a very close first and second battle as to who's better with the ball at their feet. I think both of them are out of this world in terms of confidence on the ball. Distribution, you can say it for what it is, and a lot of people will say, the only real stock that went up in Onana was after that Champions League final, but I've heard a lot of, top coaches and, players who've, worked with him or played, next to him as a teammate, who have sung his praises massively in terms of the confidence that he has on the ball. And it is basically giving you an added footballer on the field. And I always believe a modern day goalkeeper, it's not about shot stopping anymore. You past the errors of, your Schmeichels and your Petr Cechs and these kind of, shot stopping world class sort of goalkeepers. It's more a case of you have to be a footballer more than maybe a goalkeeper in some cases is how it's referred to in football. And Onana, I just think that the confidence that he will have on the ball, it gives you another option to distribute and play out from the back. I mean, I take, for example, when Man United went away to Liverpool, you went to Anfield, and David De Gea, it was always booted long up to Wout Weghorst or Rashford or somebody, or in many cases, sometimes it doesn't even reach the target because it doesn't even direct in that direction towards going to the right player it's supposed to. But I think Onana, it gives you that freshness, and the one thing that you can say with Manchester United is it's something new, and I think for years now, Manchester United fans have wanted a manager to come in and rip up the rule book, really. And, Erik ten Hag came in and he said, look, I'm not a nostalgic manager. I'm going to bring the players in who I believe are going to be a success for this football club. I'm not just going to keep the people who've been the furniture for years. I want to refurbish. And I think Andre Onana in for David De Gea, I think that proves that, really. And I think a lot of the players that really is pulled out of the firing line in the last couple of months, and for his first season anyway, the likes of Harry Maguire swapping him out for Alessandro Martinez and Casemiro going in there instead of McFred, like replacing maybe, average or mediocre players with, world-class quality in their positions. I mean, you bring in Casemiro, one of the best central defensive midfielders in the world. You bring in Andre Onana, one of the best goalkeepers in the world right now, really. Martinez, one of the best ball-playing centre-backs, that you can get within Europe at the time. And, he's bringing in quality players to take over the throne, really. And having someone like an Onana, I just think it gives the confidence for the back line. And really, it gives Manchester United and, I guess, Ten Hag that tactical flexibility that he can do a lot more with this team than he could do last season in terms of the goalkeeper behind them can back them up. So if he wants to control games and play in opposition's half, he can now do that. Whereas with David De Gea, he couldn't do. And you can say maybe it's carrying a player along or whatever you want to say. But the way Ten Hag has always been, the relationship that he's always had with Andrea Onana has always been a fruition one. It's always been a successful one, especially when there was at Ajax as well. And, you know, there's a lot to be sought after for getting a new goalkeeper. And it's not just about, you know, having somebody fresh, but it's about having somebody who's perfect for your team. And I think if anybody knows how Erik Ten Hag's style of play is to play out from the back more so, it's Andrea Onana, because he was one of the best players in that Ajax team when they had a successful period and pattern when they was both partnered at Ajax. And bringing him to the Premier League, I just think you come into one of the best leagues in the world, and yeah, you know, it takes balls to come to the Premier League and show ambition, really. And I think Andrea Onana, he wants to do that now, and it's a final step.
I mean, you bring an interesting point, and you mention a one David De Gea, and in fact, let's actually take a bit of a diversion. Obviously, chat. In fact, I might put a poll on that. Put a poll about Onana and what was success, but we'll probably put a poll about De Gea, because even I've had issues with De Gea recently. I've had, obviously, you know, a few issues with things. So, but the way that the club seems to be treating him does not seem good to me. Anyway, I don't like, you know, he's on holiday, you know, getting married, etc. You know, and now United getting a goalkeeper, and it's kind of like, you know, and it seems that Ten Hag, I think that, from what I understand, there was a contract. I mean, maybe you know a bit of information to Tom and maybe share about it, but some clout on the hair situation would be good as well. But from what I understand, the contract was ready for him. It was going to be on reduced wages. He was going to sign it, and then Ten Hag vetoed that decision, which is his right as the manager of Manchester United, and wanted to sign a new keeper. Now, does that, and whilst obviously, and now obviously, because Haya's situation is in the air, because obviously he got approaches from the Saudi Pro League as well, who are interested in wanting to offer him to got a contract there. I don't know whether he has any contracts elsewhere or conversation from other clubs, but the point is that you know, what is happening with the De Gea situation, what United's doing with the De Gea situation, because, you know, you spending 60 million on Onana is being signed to be first choice or to challenge the first choice. That's why, you know, that's why he's being brought in. So is it just a question of that, you know what, we're going to renew De Gea's contract and he just basically just leaves? And if that's the case, I think that it's quite a disgrace and a shambles from the club to treat, even though you can have your personal opinions about David De Gea, whether he's good, bad, etc., but it's a shambles that you basically say to a club who served the club for since basically the last third you play, essentially, and you basically say, yeah, we had a contract for you, we don't have a contract for you, we're going to keep you in the dark about what's going on, you know, come back. And I don't know, it's a bit weird. What do you think? What do you actually like? Is he happy being number two? I don't know. Like what do you think is happening? Because obviously we can't have Onana, and even now the rumors that we're potentially getting the Japanese goalkeeper to come in as a potential understudy to Onana. And it's like, okay, hang on a minute. Okay, so we've got Heaton, we've got Dean Henderson, we've got De Gea. We don't really technically have him, and then we're signing Onana and potentially Japanese. Like, clearly, you know, some of these keeps are going to go, and I anticipate Dean Henderson. Dean Henderson has to leave. He has to be sold to Forest. That has to happen. I expect Forest to pay at least 20 million, maybe 15, 20 million for him. You know, so, you know, but yeah, I mean, Tom, what do you think? What do you think? I'm just confused about the whole thing, because I know people are getting gassed and hyped about Onana, and fair enough. I will still reserve judgment, like I do with any person that comes to the Premier League from Serie A, because it's one thing to do it in he didn't in the Champions League final, great, but you know, he was also playing in Serie A as well for Inter. But it's another thing to do it in the Premier League as well. But what do you think of the whole situation?
I mean, with the De Gea situation, he had a contract offer on the table originally on reduced wages, and it was rumoured to be around £300,000. Now, the contract at the time was a stipulation. It was offered to him I think it was about 5 days before the Sevilla game away, and they'd offered him the new contract, and David De Gea had sat on the contract for all the way up until the FA Cup final. That contract was still on the table, and David De Gea's team never responded to the offer of £300,000 a week, and he had the assurance at the time that he was going to be the number one goalkeeper. And the Sevilla game played out, and that obviously embroiled not just the fan base, but the coaching staff to question, is he the right man to be offering him this sort of terms in the contract and agreement? And then you had the West Ham game as well, and you had the FA Cup final. There was a lot of moving factors, and ultimately they got to the summer transfer window. John Murtough and Erik ten Hag, and they had decided upon pre-opening of the transfer window, they wanted to target Harry Kane. A number 9 was the priority, and they were going to blow 3/4, if not most, of the budget that they had in place on a number 9, and their preference was Harry Kane. And after the interest fizzled out because they learned that Daniel Levy wasn't prepared to sell to a Premier League rival unless it was going to be stupid money. And I'm not talking 1 and then 2 zeros. I'm talking the number 2 and then 2 zeros on the end. That's the sort of figures that they were quoting. And in terms of the agreement for David De Gea, they got to the end of the season after the FA Cup final, and before David De Gea's team could even look at the options at the time and look at the offer in detail, Manchester United withdrew the offer because they looked at him for, is this guy serious about committing his future? But also the manager had played a big hand in the contract being removed off of the table, and they then reinserted a new agreement which was on a further reduced wage, which is believed to have been around £225,000 a week. So it's a bigger step than 300,000 a week from 375. So it's, you know, pretty much 150k down, really. And after that stipulation of that contract, there was no guarantee that David De Gea would be the number one goalkeeper next season. And that was based upon if the budget stretched far enough to go and get a new goalkeeper. And with them not chasing the number 9 that they wanted in the first place in Harry Kane for the valuation that they wanted, they prioritised other positions. They prioritised a midfielder with with quality technical ability and somebody who's a development player who you can use in a system and you can, embody and develop as a player. And they decided upon Mason Mount fit the profile, both for the club's vision and Erik ten Hag's vision as his system. And they made Mason Mount priority. They've got Mason Mount deal over the line. And then Andre Onana's the next deal that they've decided to move on to in this case for a new goalkeeper. And they tested into resolve and into were willing sellers at the time, and they still are now. So with the David De Gea situation, as you said, he has got many offers on the table. He's got 2 offers, in fact, from Saudi Arabia, one from Al Nassr and one from Al Hilal. And those wages range between £250,000 per week when you convert it up to upwards of £325,000 per week. And there he would have a guarantee that he's going to be a number one goalkeeper. And there has been a couple of interests from within and around Europe. It depends upon where their goalkeepers go originally. And Valencia, for example, with their goalkeeper, there was some interest from Chelsea at the time, and that seems to have died down. So they're not so much as looking at David De Gea, and a return to Atletico Madrid was on the cards at the time. And Diego, this is going to come as a bit of a funny story. Diego Simeone said, "I would only take him back as a third choice goalkeeper." And I look at that and I think, it's a bit of a stinger blow, really, to go back to your former club like that.
But I'm surprised that no one in the Premier League would is interested in De Gea.
There is a lot of clubs in the Premier League have rated David De Gea before. For example, Tottenham, I think, would have been a prime example when Larissa's contract was running out. If David De Gea wasn't on the rate of the wages that he's on, say if he was just like a normal, standard goalkeeper wage of around £150,000 to £200,000 per week, in a normal ideal world sense, clubs like Tottenham would have they would have looked at the option. Maybe they wouldn't have gone for it, but they would have at least looked at David De Gea. And even other clubs that if Newcastle wasn't settled with Nick Pope, I'm sure there would have been a conversation to be had there around bringing in someone with experience and who's actually won trophies to their team. And I think that sort of scenario it could have played out, but as the window opened and they realised that they weren't going to pursue Harry Kane and they'd made that decision, they then went and said, well, if we're not going to prioritise getting that position, let's prioritise 3 different positions for the sake of one position and blowing our whole budget on it. Really taking a step out of, I guess, the Liverpool model where they were going to blow upwards of 80 or 100 million pounds, near enough their whole transfer budget on Jude Bellingham, and instead they've bought 2 midfielders for the price of that, and they're now chasing a third. And Manchester United are doing the same thing now, getting Mason Mount in and Andre Onana. Then they're also chasing a number 9 in terms of Rasmus Hojlund, which I'm sure we'll get onto in a minute. And there is other moving parts like Ten Hag. If the budget stretches in terms of the sales that they make, they want to try and get in another midfielder as well. So there is some room in terms of the budget for Manchester United to get someone, players in. But in terms of David De Gea, even if Andre Onana is signed, David De Gea still has an option to sign and re-sign for Manchester United. But the contract clearly states on the terms of it's £225,000 a week plus appearance-related bonuses, which might rise to upwards of 250. But how many appearances are you going to play when you're not the number 1 goalkeeper? And if United get knocked out of a couple of cup competitions early on, you're not really going to play many games. And you still, even at the age of, I think he's at 32 now, you still have 3-4 years ahead of you in terms of an agreement potentially at another football club. So you can still play football at a pretty high level if you were to try and get an offer from Europe, maybe rather than Saudi Arabia.
I mean, it's a difficult one because I do think the club has treated De Gea disrespectfully in this respect. But a part of me is also like, okay, why can't, because we still don't know how Onana will be when it comes to Premier League. It could be a similar situation like when Pep, he booted out Joe Hart, and then initially signed it was a Claudio Bravo, and he was awful. He was good in Spain, he was good for Barca, he was great, but then as soon as he came to the Premier League, he was just awful. And Pep was like, nah, I can't. He's my number 2. That's it. I need to get, and they did what they did. So, and you can make an argument that possibly had he not gotten rid of Hart so quickly, and allowed him to compete with Claudio Bravo, that maybe that scene would have been okay. But the point I'm trying to make is that I highly doubt that if Onana flops, that United are going to now spend another 6 million on getting a top quality goalkeeper. So I just feel like it makes more sense for if De Gea is happy to stay and potentially be a second choice and compete for first, I think that's fine. If the issue is that he feels that he has to be number 1, then that's I think that he needs to be reasonable in that respect, So, and I think that's the clarity here. It's like, is it that he wants to be number 1, in which case, sorry, De Gea, it is what it is, or is the situation, that he's happy to compete with second, in which case, if I was United, you sell Dean Henderson, you could keep some third choice, that's fine, and then take things from there, But I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
No, well, the thing that I have always known with De Gea, even when obviously the what they call it, Faxgate, don't they? When the paperwork didn't get filed for him to go to Real Madrid at the time, and maybe if that paperwork had gone through, you wouldn't be sitting here right now having this conversation. But even with saying that with David De Gea, I mean the way that it's been handled, it's not been particularly great. I mean, you're putting money, you're putting offers on the table, multi-million-pound offers on the table for a player to stay, and then you pull the plug on it. And you can understand from the club's perspective, the priorities around the transfer window changed, but also in terms of the player's future and his actually just himself in terms of like his personal life, he's had to go into his marriage and take vows and whatnot, and he doesn't even know if he can pay the bills for his family or for his wife. Like, I know that sounds a bit rich coming from somebody who's made millions off the back of Manchester United in this case,
one
but
of United's highest earners. But yeah.
at the end of the day, you know, he has done some miraculous things for the football club in big games, and you know, unfortunately, it has derailed over the last couple of years from mistakes and errors. And the way with De Gea is really his whole embodiment is he's always been a number one, really, wherever he's been. Apart from when he first came to Manchester United and his early days at Atletico Madrid, he's really always been a number one. He's never really had to learn the trait off of anybody else. He was thrown in the deep end as a young player at Atletico and did particularly okay. Came to Manchester United as a young player, understudied the likes of Edwin van der Sar, and then he took up the role and took the baton over from there. And really, with De Gea, you can say it for what it is. He's given upwards of 12 years to the football club, and it's a long time for a player really that you would say, in many cases, regardless of your opinion, probably deserves a testimonial. I think anyway, when you're at any football club,
Exactly.
if you've won a league title, you won a league title or a European Cup, if any form, Europa League, Conference League, or Champions League, I think even if, in some cases at some clubs, if you even win a trophy, I think you deserve a testimonial. People laugh at it when they say about with Phil Jones. Listen, he's won major trophies at Man United. If you hate the opinion against them, they've done something to impact your football club, and they was a member of that squad. So give them a farewell send off. You listen, if you want to go there and voice, if you don't agree with the opinion, then don't go there.
David De Gea is the last United player to have won a major trophy, and that's still the club. Obviously, Phil Jones has been released; he's gone. But the reality is that David De Gea is the last one.
And He's the last of the old guard. Yeah,
exactly. It's almost like the end of an era, So let me just quickly read some comments, and then we'll just wrap up on Onana and then talk a few other things. Let's have a look. Let's go back. Let's have a look. Okay, Stephanie says Onana already knows Alicia and Anthony and possibly Donny, so setting in will be no problem. Seems to be a big personality presence. Looks like a shrewd move to play more progressive front for football, and I 100% agree with that. And be interested to see how different we play with Onana go. I'm much more looking forward to this sign than I am the Mount signing, but we'll see. Maybe he'll make an impact. James says, he ain't your average keep. This guy, there's going to be moments next season when our fan base will be like, what the fuck? That's fair enough. Almost like an Eric Bay of goalkeeping, So, I mean, that's
Fabian Barthez sort of vibes.
Fabian Barthez vibes. Look, funny enough, I was actually watching, what was it? A clip of when we beat Arsenal. I think it was 6-1 at Old Trafford, and Fabian Barthez was gone. Dwight York scored a hat-trick in 2001, I think. So good times. And what I would say though, for United fans, that there's this weird thing that people have that Manchester United under Fergie played bad football. Like they played this kind of it's just counter-attack, it's just boring, or Fergie paid everyone. But we actually played a lot of nice football under Fergie. So people need to sort of, and a lot of that actually came through Paul Scholes, who was absolutely. I've been watching clips of Scholes recently. This guy was criminally underrated. His retention, 1-2 passing, his vision. Anyway, But anyway, that's the side. De Gea is a great goalkeeper, and I have that De Gea playing from the back. Yeah, De Gea playing from the back is not great. Love this transfer, says Mattia, but the biggest one for me will be Glazed out. Yep, Qatarian. Yep, I know this isn't obviously a Qatar show. Update. Maybe we might get something over the weekend. Maybe in this week we'll bring that back. Obviously. Let's have a look. Mega says, Ten Hag better challenge the league since he got rid of the problems in De Gea and Cristiano Ronaldo. Nah, he's not challenging. As much as I would like that, Mega, he's not challenging the league anytime soon. Not with this squad. I think we've got to be reasonable and see the fact that at the end of the day, the reality is that every other squad is improving. I just look at Liverpool basically bought an entire new midfield now, effectively buying an entire midfield, if you think about it. Newcastle has strengthened their midfield, which was already strong with the Bruno Guimaraes character. They're now adding Tonali into that, and then potentially, others on top of obviously what they had. City, enough said. Arsenal, enough said. So next season is gonna be difficult. If anything, I'm looking at what Spurs are doing, because I still think Spurs haven't done enough, unless the manager does something. And I'm looking at Chelsea doing, and I'm thinking, well, we're 4 weeks to the beginning of preseason. I think it's 4 weeks till preseason, or 4 weeks to the season. No, it's 4 weeks to the season. 4 weeks to the season. So we're a month away from the season, and I haven't seen Chelsea make what I would call like a major signing. They bought a lot of youngsters, a lot of potential, and Cuckoo, Nicholas, etc. But I've not seen them actually make a major signing or to improve or to replace them in the squad. So the point I'm trying to make, guys, is that it's going to be competitive next season, regardless, especially with Champions League football that we have. David T says, "Imagine being uncertain about your family's future while getting married." Yes, yes. Omega, ONANA is going to expose or taking limits to our whole squad is Rashford, Bruno. Well, I mean, in with the old, out of the new. That's why more and more signings. I still think that if we sign ONANA, we need a forward. I would have preferred Kane. You got Højlund, but I guess the impression I'm getting is that Kane is probably going to stay at Spurs for another year and he's going to go for free. And if he goes for free, does he? Well, he's not going to go to City, and if United are in a better position, he might go to Manchester United, or potentially Madrid if they come knocking. Who knows? I don't know. I'm actually surprised that Real Madrid haven't actually made him make a bid for Kane yet. Maybe it's because they want to focus on getting Mbappe. I don't know, but they need a striker, in my personal opinion. So Glazers still stay in. United and experts to win big titles. Yes, we need them out. David T says, but we'll be able to push our backline up the field and not stay in our own half because I'll keep up and something up the field. That's a fair point. We should be able to. Everyone should be able to go up further, more forward. I think definitely. I think that will help. Pep said players like Rashford can't hold up the ball when he complimented. Yeah, and then it says, imagine you give your offers come in this. Yeah, I know. I think it's not right. The thing about pressing is that you win the ball back. So if we can't hold the ball, if we can't hold up a ball, players like Mount, Rashford, and Bruno can win the ball back, high up the field immediately. Okay, well, hopefully they can do that. You don't need ball retention to win a game. Yeah, I think ball retention is overrated personally, and. It says get rid of the deadwood. Well, the issue Lindelof isn't deadwood. No, relax. Lindelof isn't deadwood. Sancho isn't deadwood yet. Donny is under review, and I personally think should be moved on, and we should sign a midfielder. And Williams Maguire's career United is over. So, but Lindelof is definitely not considered deadwood. He had a good season. If you saw our review show, Ilias, I rated Lindelof this season because when he was asked to play, he played well. So that's my 2 cents. Stephanie against a straight talking was required. Do you want to stay? Yes or no? If yes, salary is this. Happy? Yes or no? If no, then give him a good send off and get a transfer fee from him. We do not operate normally. Well, we can't get a transfer fee from anyway because his contract is now expired, so he's essentially a free agent. So in theory, De Gea could speak to anybody. But yeah, I agree with Tom's point that it was a very strange. The contract offer was there, and De Gea could have signed it at any point, but he waited till the end of the season. So, in one sense, it is his fault because had he signed it, there'd have been no debate. But the fact that he left until the end of the season so he could get guaranteed assurances that he would be first, choice is questionable because it also gave the coach more time to assess him. Because at the end of the day, the last 10 games of the season are often the most crucial games. Europa League, FA Cup, all the rest of it. And the reality is that against Sevilla, and even against City in the final, De Gea did not show himself in any glory whatsoever. We lost those fixtures partly because of De Gea contributed some level to the incompetence there. So and in fairness to Ollie, to keep it a stack, like if De Gea, I mean, to be in credit today, he made a lot of fantastic saves. Don't get me wrong, he did. But at the same time, you are thinking, you know, look, even the Europa League when with the penalty shootout, you know what I mean? So these are the things. Let's see. It says Tom talk for the takeover. Give us some news. That's not this show. That's not this show. That's what maybe if you guys stay towards the end and you like the vid and you subscribe if you're new, maybe Tom might be able to give a brief update towards the end of the show. So stay tuned. And yes, Stephanie is right. 29. Just bump those likes up, guys. Like the vid, please. It makes a lot. Before I'll just quick see if there's any. And Sedim Mom says he wants Onana, please. Jerry says, I do not think we will see United challenge for a title until at least a summer or two more. We are far behind City and on and off the field. Need a state-of-the-art training. Yep, exactly. 100% exactly. And RSV says, Bruno is technical for those who don't watch him play, especially playing in a deeper position, says RSV. And there was one other comment that I think, and that's you, Tom. I think Matty, yeah, because we've been hearing rumors. We're still in the goalkeeping situation. Matty says, guys, do you know much about the goalkeeper from Japan? I think it's called what's the name again? Suzuki Zion. Is it Zion Suzuki? I think Zion Suzuki. Do you know? Like, obviously, I've not watched the guy. All I know is that he plays in the J League, and there's rumors here. United are interested, but do you have any clarity regarding this guy? Any understanding about him, Tom?
Well, Zion Suzuki's a goalkeeper that, ironically, Manchester United have actually been following for 5-6 years now as a young player. They looked at obviously he's been playing for Japan, under 21s level, and he'll probably make the Japanese men's team, in years to come. Really, he's a very promising young goalkeeper, really, and I think he's probably one of the best young goalkeepers to come out of the J League, irrespective of nationality. And in terms of prospects and promises, like, he's a 20-year-old, up and coming goalkeeper, and it's understanding that a £5 million sort of valuation is over him, and £5 million in the J League is really, that if that was to happen, it would make him the most expensive signing in the history of the J League, ironically enough. And I look at that and I think, if you're putting that big of a price tag on somebody from your own league, like, it means that there's something about them. And from what I've uncovered really about him, really, is that he's a decent shot stopper. He's very athletic and very up and down, and he'll come and claim for the ball, and distribution's okay. I think it can be developed and it needs to be worked on to a higher degree, but he's 20 years old. He's got years to do that and to develop that, really. And in terms of a coach, I think with how modern day managers are thinking nowadays, your Erik Ten Hag's, your Jurgen Klopp's, your Pep Guardiola's, the way football's going, really, you need a goalkeeper like this, and he's modelling himself really as a complete packaged goalkeeper. And the only thing that you can really throw against him is he's a young player, so anything that he's really not as talented or as special as, it can be worked on it and it can be developed. So there is room for development there. But in terms of Manchester United actually going for him, it's a different really scenario. The way that they're looking at it is they don't know what David De Gea's move is, if they're going to take the second offer or not, in terms of he's going to be the backup goalkeeper. So they can't really pursue a young goalkeeper. They've also got Tom Heaton, who they've already blocked a move for him to go to Luton Town as potentially being their first choice goalkeeper. So right now they've got 5 goalkeepers, because they've got Mateo Kovac, who's come back from the Czech Republic League, where he's just won the Czech League with Slavia Praga. Like, they've really got 5 goalkeepers right now. They've got Kovac, they've got Henderson, potentially De Gea, Tom Heaton's around. If they bring in Onana, that's 5 potentially. And then if you bring in this kid, that's 6. Like, 6 goalkeepers for, really, if we're being honest, 2 spots in a squad that actually means something. First choice and second choice. The third choice is really a pre-season, maybe rotation goalkeeper if one of the others get injured. But You know, ultimately and overall, the kid's listen. He's a good young goalkeeper, and there's a lot of things to his game that will probably need to be developed to play at a high level. But I guess one thing that you can never criticise is Manchester United's reach in terms of their scouting network. I think it shows a showcase in terms of a young player like this and how far-reaching that Manchester United are looking at. They're looking at, the South Asian market where a lot of players are coming through from there. Kim Min-jae's come from that league more recently. Heung-min Son really aspired a lot of those, players from the South Asian nations to come to Europe, really, and he took the flagship on and he made a success of it, really. And a lot of young players that are now moulding out of that league and coming to the Premier League or coming to just Europe in general to play and compete. And I look at the young kid and I think, look, a lot of teams will take him, as a third choice goalkeeper and try and develop them. And I think ultimately and overall, he's a good goalkeeper to potentially use as a prospect and a prop tool. But he's got a lot of things that he would need to work on in his game, especially if he was going to play for a club of the size of Manchester United. But listen, if distribution, in my opinion, is one of the analyses that I say that he probably would have to work on. I mean, if you come and be backup, even third choice, fourth choice, I think Andre Onana is a perfect goalkeeper for you to come and work with, really.
That's a good one. ONANA, Kovac, and Suzuki fighting for that number one spot. So I'm assuming that means, at the end of the day, United also need to sell. And the way I kind of see it is that, if we can get money, I don't know why I think, Heaton, didn't we get an offer for him too? It was turned out maybe him too. If Luton Town are saying we'll pay you, between 5 to 10 million for Tom Heaton, who I still think is actually a good goalkeeper. I still rate Tom Heaton, actually. I think he's a very good a penalty stopper for one. And actually, it's just he had injuries, but I rate the guy. And then you get, potentially 20 million from Nottingham Forest for Dean Henderson. That's 30 million already that can go into the bank. That can, be saved. That can go towards, us potentially using that money to buy, for example, Højlund, who we're going to talk about in a second. But it's just the way that I see it is that, I'm looking at United's squad right now, and really and truly, it's only ironic enough our goalkeepers that I feel are going to get us money. Maybe Fred. Fulham might give us 15 to 20 million for him, and that's about it. Like Fred, Dean Henderson, and maybe Tom Heaton. Everybody else in the squad, the Deadwood in the squad, the Maguires, the potential McTominays, the Brandon Williams, the Donny van der Beek, Silangs, etc. We're not getting much in the realm for them, and that's disappointing. Because we need to, we need to be like Chelsea, who have somehow been able to offload so many of their players, whether it's to Saudi or now, Christian Pulisic is now they've gotten rid of Chelsea. Have gotten rid of Havertz, Mason Mount, obviously. Pulisic is gone. They've gotten rid of Koulibaly. They got rid of Mendy as well. They got rid of Hakim Ziyech. I think that's all of them. And Kante. Well, they didn't give Kante a new contract. So that's 7 players. 7 players that they were able to just get rid of and and 6 of them they were able to get a fee. United, when was the last time we were able to sell a player for a profit, let alone actually selling players? You've not sold anybody. You've not sold anybody.
So Zidane Iqbal.
Zidane Iqbal.
So Zidane Iqbal for less than a 2-bedroom flat in London. Says it all.
This club, man, this joke of a club. I've seen his comps as David T. Sign him 5 minutes is still. He's a better deal than Weghorst. Well, anything is to be fair. That is true, David T. I can't lie. That is true. That is definitely true. Right. Richard says need Takeover update. Rumors just coming out. Glazers holding out 6 billion. No deal. Richard, we will. It's unfortunate it's a transfer show, but maybe if you stay tuned, we might do a small one towards the end of the show. We'll see what happens. Let's see if there's anything. Yeah. Okay. So let's kind of move on, because we obviously talked about the goalkeeper for almost an hour or so. We dissected Onana, David De Gea as well. But let's talk about another player that United obviously are closely linked to and potentially might sign together with what's going on. And that's obviously Rasmus Hojlund. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. What do you know? How do you know? Obviously Hojlund is obviously seems to be keen for the deal. United need a striker. And I would have loved Osimhen, but Osimhen apparently is too much of our price range, and Harry Kane is out of our price range. Hojlund guy seems to have potential. I actually still think even if we sign him, we still want to sign another striker, because I think Martial needs to be sold, and that leaves us with still a 20 or number 9 that will line to score goals. So if I was United and if I was Kane, I'd be like, get Kane to agree to sign a pre-contract next season and get Hojlund to develop. That would be what I would do, unless the guy this season is just on fire and smashes it. Then that's a different story. Then he can be your number 1. But what do you think about Rasmus Hojlund? And obviously, there's reports that I'm hearing that potentially one of the things that might help with this transfer is that Greenwood, because Ten Hag does not want to let go of Greenwood, might go the other way on a loan deal, which might be useful. And I think, maybe better for all situations, clubs involved. What do you think about this? What's the likelihood of United getting? Are you hearing things from your sources? What do you think?
No, with Hojlund, it's a difficult one really, because when United, as I say, came into the window, the perfect window for United was they was chasing 2 strikers. They wanted an experienced striker, and then they wanted a young up and coming striker, and they didn't expect Atalanta to put such a huge asking price on a 20-year-old that's only scored 24 goals professionally. Like putting €100 million price tag, which comes to around about £85 million, on a player who's only ever scored 24 goals in their whole career, really. Yeah. And after the World Cup from Qatar, really that's the only sort of form that you'd ever seen this player hit. And he's not even a first team starter really for Atalanta. I mean, it sums it up really. And look, Hojlund as a player, like, from what I've heard and from what I know around him, is a good sort of kid, really. He's a kid who is very ambitious. He wants to work with the best, and he wants to test himself in the best leagues in the world. And from what I know around him as a child, he's very much been a Manchester United fan, and his father as well, was reportedly anyway, his father was at the '99 final and certain things like that. So there's a bit of a family bloodline there between, the Hojlund family and Manchester United in terms of, supporting the football club. So there is those, bridges there between the two. And look, I think for a 20-year-old to have the opportunity to come to Manchester United, it doesn't come around very often, as we've just discussed with Zion Suzuki. Like, being a 20-year-old and having Manchester United knock on your door, it's it's a blessing. It comes once in a generation for many people to ever have that opportunity, and some people, have the luck or the roll of the dice, and it lands on them, and the deal goes through, and in some cases it doesn't, unfortunately. But with Hojlund, it's an interesting situation, because John Murtough has, been engagement with Atalanta for well over a month now. They made their interest very clear, pre-window. Even before the FA Cup final, Manchester United had made their interest clear to Atalanta that, look, we like Rasmus Hojlund as a player. We're very much interested in him. And, would you give us permission to speak to his agency? And for which his agency has currently switched to, I think it's SGN, which is the same agency that Erik Ten Hag currently works under at this moment in time with. I think his name is Fan Course, which is Erik Ten Hag's personal agent from the agency, who's, if you like, playing a bit of a middleman role between the two. From having that agent who's got the connection to the manager of United as well, it builds the partnership really. And if Hojlund, as I say, with a family bloodline sort of rumour, if that is led to be true in terms of reporting, I don't see how personal terms would be a problem for a 20-year-old coming to Manchester United really. And I think personal terms is almost a given really for this player. The stumbling block is the valuation, and 85 point, upwards of 85 million pounds. I mean, it's money that Manchester United don't have, and even if they did have at this current point, they wouldn't be touching anywhere near the surface of. They like Højlund as a player, but they're not going to pay ridiculous money for, as it's been quoted, potential. They can see themselves getting a player who's experienced bigger moments than Højlund has in his career for that sort of price. For example, as we say,
sorry to interrupt you, Tom. I hope this is a joke. I hope this is a joke. No,
that is actually a true thing as well, Chief.
Wow.
I'm not. Yeah, it is. He's one of the chief negotiators for Atalanta at this time.
That's interesting.
I look at it with John Murtough, who's really been holding the glue to the deal. Really, as soon as they heard the valuation, Manchester United they didn't even entertain it really, and they look at Højlund and they think, look, if the player, as they understand it from the same thing as us in terms of the bloodline sort of scenario, so there is a bit of fan affection towards the football club, and also for him as a player with his age and everything. And look, if Atalanta are prepared to do a deal, then they'll do it, But the sort of figuring that United were looking at was they were looking more at the 60, 65 million pound market in terms of that's their maximum price. And they were looking at opening the offering around 45, 50 million pounds. And I think with Atalanta, really, I think if they're reasonable in terms of they want to actually sell players this summer, then I think they will come down from that evaluation, because I don't see anybody in Europe paying that sort of figure for a player who scored 24 goals. I mean, his valuation's more than, how many goals he's actually scored within his career. I mean, near enough triple. And I think with Højlund, as I say, it's a player that, Erik ten Hag has gave the seal approval off of, in terms of he's a good young player out there in the world, and that he can develop to be a superstar, and, bring him to Manchester United. The physical presence that he brings as well, I don't think it'd be hard for him to adapt to the league either. And look, in terms of finishing, that's the only real criticism that I think a lot of people have thrown at Højlund, is that he needs to be a bit more clinical in front of goal. But listen, you've got one of the best, I would say anyway, striking coaches within Europe in Benny McCarthy, who's done wonders for Marcus Rashford's conversion and in terms of his career and development in a short space of time. And I think you bring somebody to the football club like Højlund, I think that's only going to fruition more. But when John Murtough's been holding the talks, really, and no official bid has actually gone in for Højlund as we speak right now, because United had moved on to the ONANA deal, and then they'll come to Højlund if they can get the ONANA deal wrapped up pretty quickly. And in terms of the valuation, if Atalanta don't drop the fee, then United will look elsewhere. Like, they're not going to sit around forever for a 20-year-old, as it's been really bashed about within United. And in terms of what you said about the Greenwood situation, it's a scenario that we spoke about really a couple of weeks ago when we were discussing around Amad Diallo potentially going back there on loan as part of a deal, or, in exchange for cutting a deal so that they get Højlund a lower rated fee. And the Amad Diallo sort of rumour is obviously blown away since then, and there's more interest in the Premier League and Championship for him. But with Højlund, with the Mason Greenwood scenario, United have come to the decision that, Erik ten Hag had put his recommendation forward in terms of he likes Mason Greenwood. If it's Mason Greenwood as the football player, he has a plan for him. But if it's Mason Greenwood in terms of the investigation that the club are currently undergoing in terms of what's best for him and for the football club, then it's really in limbo. The best case scenario for United that I know internally is that the football department would hate to lose a player like Mason Greenwood because of the potential and the talent that he could go on to another football club and, flourish under. But the commercial side of the football club are massively aware of the backlash that they will have from certain sponsorship deals and commercial rights that they would have with certain broadcasters and developers. So there's a commercial element, but there's a footballing element as well. And with Greenwood, it's a situation where two Italian clubs, as far as I know right now, have concrete interest in him, and a third is limbering in the background. And the two clubs that currently have an interest is Juventus and Atalanta. They're the two clubs that we know of right now that have definitive interest. The other one's Roma, but that's a little bit in the background at this moment in time. And there's a little bit of skepticism around if Roma need another attacking player to bolster what they already have with Tammy Abraham and Paulo Dybala. But in terms of putting a deal in with Greenwood, if it means that Manchester United get a better deal for Højlund and Atalanta cut them a deal at around £50 million or in that region, inclusive of add-ons or exclusive of add-ons, if even better, and Atalanta get a player in return who's a similar profile of player, similar age, needs a bit of development work, just on a straight loan deal. So then it gives Atalanta some breathing space to try and find a replacement in the future. Then Manchester United will be happy to let Mason Greenwood go. Suffices if Mason Greenwood's happy to go out on loan, for which the understanding is that it is. He wants to play regular football and he doesn't see himself getting into the United team right now. But if he can go somewhere and pick up some form and development, then if the manager and, as I say, the decision is that they want to keep him, he still has a long-term contract at United, then by all means it will probably business as usual. Whether your opinion on Mason Greenwood, is inclusive of the situation that happened between himself and his partner at the time, and him as an individual or him as a footballer. As a footballer, you can never dispute the talent and the potential there, and that's really the one thing that's holding United back in terms of if they was to let him leave permanently, is they believe that he could go and become a superstar somewhere else and it could come back to bite them in the arse. So if it can help them with the Højlund deal, it's something that John Murtough is actively looking at and following. But with or without Mason Greenwood inclusive of the deal, Manchester United will pursue Rasmus Hojlund after they get an agreement on a deal over the line in principle for Andre Onana.
Sorry, I was in a mood. I was actually speaking quite a bit, but I did not realize I was mood. Sorry. Fair enough, Chief. Fair enough, Chief. Let me quickly read some. Let me have a quick look at some questions, comments. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, West Ham have an Iron McTominay. Problem is that Highway just what's difficult. Sure, I can exactly. Chelsea had the deal with Saudi Arabia. That's the only reason why they sold as much as they did. Why can't we do something? It's not really a deal. It's not really a deal. From what I understand, is that I'm sure Tom can explain is that one. Remember, Chelsea are not owned by a single entity. They've been bought by a consortium to which Todd Bowley is a part of, but he's not the only person that's part of the consortium. And it sounds like one of the consortiums, one of the chief stakeholders in part of that consortium is a Saudi group. Now, whether their connections there, I don't know, but obviously, it's spurious. Let's have a look. Looking forward to the transfer. I'm sick of transfer like Igalo, but I actually thought that Ibra did okay when he came for his age. Igalo, I mean, you're saying you're giving those examples. I mean, like Igalo was alone. Ibra, I think, actually did okay before he got injured, although he didn't have any pace. And Cavani again, likewise, it was injury prone. Like all three of those players were still far better than what we got with Weghorst, who was supposed to be in. Like that's the funny thing is like. Weghorst is supposed to be the one that's like in his in quote prime. All those three players were far, far, far from their prime when they came to Manchester United, and they still did better than what Weghorst did. It's amazing. It's really amazing. Stephanie Horn has huge potential. Greenwood is part of the deal. What's this Mike guy saying? Okay, I don't know what this Michael guy is saying from Sir, but yeah, see you later, mate. Stephanie Griffith says, January 2020 transfer window would be equally important for United. Ivan Toney available again. That's true after his betting ban. could be worth a gamble, so to speak. Tempted to get a deal done now ahead of us. Yep, fair enough, mate. Fair enough. I don't do that. And Matt says this is the best possible solution for Gruen. I think so too. I think so too. You know, at the end of the day, with the Greenwood situation, is that it's clear that the club don't want to lose the asset, and it's clear that Ten Hag is thinking, right, okay, you know, I'm looking at my squad and my future, and I need to plan for it. And right now, I've got an injury-prone Martial, I've got Rashford, I've got Anthony and Sancho who are neither here nor there, and Sancho is definitely not there. And then the outside of that, I've got youngsters. You know, I can't afford right now. You know, if you give me Mbappe tomorrow, that's different. But right now, I can't afford to. You know, it just doesn't make sense. So it's affordable likes, guys. Get those likes up. Get those likes. Come on, let's get to these 50. Amrabat is criminally underrated. His tackling success rate and ball question is only second to Rodri. Interesting. Qatar era will hopefully be hopefully, but the way it's looking like it's like we're not going to get there before the season. So you know, before you begin to round up, Tom, and obviously, if anyone has any questions for Tom in the chat, for myself, please let them know. Get this up in the chat. Really appreciate it. From what you hear for Tom, is there anyone that anyone else outside of the Rasmus Hojlund, Harry Kane, ONANA, who are probably going to get? Is there any other players that you hear that United have been interested in, linked with, or talking to, etc.?
Yeah, well, at the same time that as I said, John Murto had built the communication line with Atalanta to discuss Højlund, he'd also done the same thing with Eintracht Frankfurt for Kolo Muani. And the valuation that Frankfurt had put on Kolo Muani at the time, where it was around £80 million, which was, in Manchester United market, when they're searching for players, is ridiculous money. Like 100 million, basically you're paying 5 million more to get Højlund, really, for what Atalanta would have wanted right now. So there is an influx of players United have been looking at, and there is a backup plan if they weren't to end up getting Højlund. And the Kolo Muani ones, I think, is a bit different because you can really do a deal and you can negotiate with Frankfurt probably a little bit better than you can with the Atalanta deal. But just based upon that Atalanta, this is their one really big meal ticket that they've had for quite some time, really. As a respective to Frankfurt, they had Luka Jovic at the time, who they sold big money for, to when he went on to Real Madrid. So there is, different situations with certain players. But irrespective of that, Kolo Muani is an interesting one if it weren't to go through for the Højlund one. Højlund's the preference right now for if they're chasing a number 9, and after the ONANA deal is likely to get done, it's probably very inclusive that you're going to hear a speed up to Højlund and potentially United negotiating, putting some offers in there. But depending on how Manchester United want to follow the transfer window up in terms of sales, after they've signed Mount, ONANA and Højlund, United need to sell players because they will have probably spent over the budget that they were supposed to originally, but also they're going to have to sell if they want to make any more additions to the squad. Now, in terms of other areas of the pitch, Erik Ten Hag, after signing the 3 players, if he was to do so, a number 9, one midfielder, which he's got in Mount, and looking very likely, as I said, with goalkeeper ONANA, he would want to bring in another midfielder. And there's 2 definite names that we know of currently right now in terms of Ten Hag likes, but whether United could sell players in time and get the sort of evaluation money that they're looking for in terms of selling players to then buy one. He likes Romeo Lavia from Southampton, but Southampton want £50 million, for which United don't have that right now, currently, without selling players of a high profile or for valuations in and around that figure. You need to sell maybe 2-3 players for, 20, if you can, 25 million each, really, to then afford someone like Lavia and still have some cash left over at the end to balance your books from what you've already overspent on the first 3 players. So after you get probably Højlund, if it was, to go through and, they get the 3 priorities that they wanted in terms of the positions, Mount, Onana and Højlund, then there's a situation where he wants to recruit another midfielder. As I say, Lavia is one that he's looked at very clearly and has identified as a player that he'd want Manchester United to try and pursue if they can in terms of the budget. But Ten Hag's well aware of the budget. And that's why he prioritised Mason Mount originally, because he was a priority player that he wanted after Kane. And obviously he didn't get Kane, so then you just go down the pecking order. And in terms of the other midfielder, Sofian Amrabat's one that Manchester United have looked at, for really well over, 2-3 years. And United had, obviously seen his stock rise, as many clubs did at the World Cup with Morocco and that great team that had the run there, and also a big game for him was the Conference League final. It was a very underwhelming game, but a lot of people in, Italian football experts and even, British-based experts had analysed the game from a neutral perspective. They'd looked at it and they saw that Amrabat really had outshone maybe Declan Rice, who's one of the hottest prospects on the market right now, going to Arsenal. So Amrabat's an interesting one. Fiorentina would want 30 million euros, around about, 20, I think it's around 22, 25 million pounds, something in and around that region for a player at, 26 years old. And he's already worked with Erik Ten Hag before. So there you go, G, again, another familiar face, another familiar player. He's worked with Erik Ten Hag at Utrecht in the Eredivisie just before, I think it was in Erik Ten Hag's last season at Utrecht, before he then moved on to Ajax, and the rest is history really from there. So depending on if United can sell players well in the market and they can raise funds, they will look to target another midfielder if they can possibly do, which then obviously takes the total to 4 players in terms of the whole window. And then really from there, Erik Ten Hag, I think, will be a lot more sustainably happy. And as you say, G, if he gets 2 midfielders, Mount and potentially an Amrabat or a Lavia, that kind of profile of player, and, you get a Højlund who, is raw potential. You've obviously then got Onana as well for the foreseeable future. And potentially then if you get to, if Harry Kane is to stay at Tottenham and Bayern Munich don't, put in another bid, which it looks like they're going to test the resolve and do so, even if it is to get rejected, then, there's a situation where United potentially could try and pursue a contract for Harry Kane and get him on a free next summer. And really, you're getting Harry Kane, in and around, I think he's around. I think by that time he'd probably be around 31. You've still got really 2-3 years ahead of a player, and you bought him for free. So then anything that you'd want to sell him on for later, I mean, you can still make a bit of a profit on, really. It's providing you don't, he probably doesn't overstay his welcome in terms of that. And you've also weakened a rival because you've taken him away from Tottenham. So, there is a situation where United could have a successful plan in terms of a vision for the long term. And also you still have someone like Højlund who can learn off of Harry Kane in the future. But there is also a situation where United do want to progress. They don't want to regress and just bring in a bunch of young players that aren't really going to add quality or improve the team. And that's why you bring in a Mason Mount who's pretty much done a lot in the short space of time at 24. He's already won the Champions League. He's been a regular mainstay really in Gareth Southgate's England squad for, a long, long time. He's been to major tournaments. He's played at a high level for a few years now. And, you bring in a player like that to add to quality in terms of experience that Casemiro's had and other players. Same thing with Andre Onana. Been to a Champions League final. I'm sure he'd want to go there again, potentially with Manchester United and win it next time. So there is situations there for Manchester United to look at in the market. But if United get their way in terms of their 3 priorities, when they reevaluated what they wanted to do after they Harry Kane deal was really taken out of their hands from Daniel Levy's evaluation was they reevaluated and they said, right, we want Rasmus Hojlund then as a priority for the striker. Mason Mount's a priority for a midfielder, and that's the number one that I want to go for first and prioritise getting him in for pre-season. And then I want a goalkeeper, and there was talk of Raya, Costa, Onana, and Erik Ten Hag, familiar face again, as we say. You know, Andre Onana was the one that the club were in agreement with Erik Ten Hag to pursue. And, you know, as I say, anything that United want to do from there, really, it depends on the budget. And if United can get some decent sales in, as you say, with Dean Henderson, Manchester United are looking at bringing in around £30 million from Nottingham Forest if they can for Dean Henderson on a permanent solution. And that's really based upon the fact of he's still a young goalkeeper for his age and he still has many, many years ahead of him. So to get a player in for that sort of figure, I think does well. Fulham, you know, pursuing Fred, there's a situation there. You know, Fulham valuing in around £10 million. I mean, United coming into the window, we're looking more for 25, but there's a reasonability that if United can get 20, they'll be happy with that. And, you know, as I say, there is a lot of interest in United players, but the problem is clubs just aren't following up on that interest, or they're going elsewhere and pursuing other targets. That's the problem right now. And I think really when you look at it for a lot of clubs, I don't see a lot of clubs coming to Manchester United and the player that they want is their priority target for the whole summer. That's really not the idea. As I say, Newcastle's priority coming in this window was we want 2 midfielders. But Scott McTominay wasn't going to be the priority midfielder. They was looking at a Barella, a Tonali, you know, a Thuram, like that profile of player they was looking at. Not going for something like a McTominay. That was really going to be a backup solution. And as I say, when the financing comes through for Declan Rice, there might be a situation with West Ham. But as I say, United have a lot of interest in their players, but a lot of clubs just aren't really following up on that interest at this point in this venture right now. But it probably will do if there's, you know, a couple of, you know, good games or some highlights maybe off of the pre-season tour that, you know, makes a couple of clubs think twice around pursuing one of their players. And, you know, from there, as I say, if Man United make decent sales, they'll pursue another midfielder. If not, you know, so be it. You might end up pursuing somebody in the January window and maybe potentially lining up a deal for Harry Kane to come next summer.
I think you, because as a roundup, I was going to ask you. I think you essentially asked. You answered Emeka Faith's question about a midfielder, so I'll put that to one side. So let me just quickly go the 3 questions in the chat, and then we'll round up here. So Shawa, I think, says, do you think if Qatar buys United and Greenwood situation would change? Actually, I don't think we can really address that really, because that's just an ongoing situation, and the board have still yet to inform us about the decision. So it's one of those we're not sure about, unfortunately. Stephanie says, Tom, is there, and I guess it goes to the general midfield situation, but is there a chance for Caicedo to come to United, or is Chelsea's likely destination? It's probably Chelsea, isn't it? I mean, come on, yeah. But what, Tom, are you?
But as you discussed before, when you said around Chelsea, they've not really signed a major player or a priority player right now. They signed some good youngsters. Caicedo is really one of those good youngsters, but he's probably the best of the good youngsters that they're trying to sign in terms of potential. 21 years old. I think, you know, enough said around Caicedo. I think he's a brilliant player. Man United had the chance to sign him for $5 million. $5 million from the Ecuadorian league, and they didn't do so.
Yep, exactly.
Maybe in a similar fold to what they potentially might do with Zion Suzuki from the J League. So United really, they do have, as I say, the scouting network reaches far, and the scouts do pursue good players for United to look at, but they just don't sign them up. That's the problem. Or we don't sign enough of them up. Palestri and Ahmad, you can say for what it is around those 2 players, but, you know, there's, like I said, there was a belief that, you know, if Man United didn't go for Mason Mount, that they would have pursued a Caicedo or that profile of player, and they would have adjusted the plans of the budget for Erik Ten Hag and to finalise getting a new goalkeeper and as well as a number 9, and then really they would have been forced into making a lot of sales. But even with Caicedo, like they look at the market, you know, Brighton are looking at the market for Declan Rice of £100 million, and they're saying, well, we want that. That's Brighton's sort of stance, but there's an understanding that a deal could come in and around £80 million because of the relationship that the player and the manager and also the directors have in terms of the player wanted to leave in January, but they persuaded him to stay in terms of the summer, and then they would get the European football that they was hoping that they would get, which they did get in the end. And then from there, they would let Caicedo leave for a reasonable price rather than just holding out and potentially a deal might collapse. So they are thinking of the player in that case. But Caicedo to United, I think it's very unrealistic unless, you know, I don't know, something miraculous happens and I don't know, a Casemiro or a Fernandes gets a lucrative offer from Saudi Arabia and they put, you know, a similar sort of figure down that Brighton want for Caicedo, then I think it's very unlikely that Man United will go in for Caicedo. And in terms of his likely destination, Chelsea are expected to ramp up their interest now that they've finalised the sale of Mason Mount. And they've done enough really to go from the red list of FFP to the amber list for now. Bringing in Caicedo as well as trying to still ship off a couple more players. The odd few, you know, your Pulisic and, you know, they're looking at pursuing a couple more off of the bills if they can, Cucurella's and players of that fold. So from there, then Chelsea might be able to do a bit of business. Lukaku as well, if, you know, United give in to the money for ONANA and then in to pursue a deal for Lukaku. Like, there's ways and means to it, really. But Caicedo going to Chelsea is probably, as Stephanie says, a more likely scenario.
That makes sense. Thank you very much, Tom. And then King such as, imagine we pay more for Haaland than City paid for Højlund than City paid for Haaland and he flops. I mean, there would, you know, I mean, we had opportunities to sign Bellingham, to sign Haaland, and all these things, you know, we did it. So I hear your point. Would I be surprised? I don't know.
It's Manchester United.
It's Manchester United at the end. And yes, this is an Amrabat addition would bring much needed defensive control to our midfield engine room and a cheap option to Cancelo. That is fair, although I think the Amrabat links, from what I can tell, are quite. I mean, are Manchester United? Do you think Manchester United will sign a? Well, you kind of really talked about some midfielder, but so rather than retread that, what I will say to round things up is, as I always ask you, Tom, is the takeover any closer or not? What is going on? What is going on, T? What's going on?
There isn't a major development on the takeover front, and the only thing that I can really give to United fans is that the Jim Ratcliffe sort of interview that came out last time. Well, anyway, it would have been in the Sun a couple of days ago, where he was saying around like the deal, he's still involved in it, he's under an NDA agreement, and you know that Manchester United's his boyhood club, and that they looked at, you know, potentially buying a stake in Barcelona under a dual ownership and so forth. Like doing really a bit of a more sporting side of an interview than he has done in the last couple of years, leading on from the Chelsea sort of sale where there was a scenario there where he tried to buy another football club, and from there. Really, it still brings us to the point that we're at now. He's wanting a green light from the Glazer family in terms of his offer, and then he'll speak to the United board and the minority investors, and he'll try and get them all on side and propose a deal that gives everybody a piece of the pie, and then thus giving him control of United to then do whatever he wants to do with the football club in terms of the future. But he's heard nothing back, and the communication hasn't been there, like I say, for 3 weeks now, really, coming up to that. The Sheikh Yassim offer, you know, the fifth and final offer went in, you know, we're coming up to nearly a month ago now. And the 9-2 Foundation, as much as they are confident in that final offer based upon its value and what it does for Manchester United Football Club in terms of waving the debt away and investments in terms of the infrastructure and the various teams, men's, women's and youth teams, the sort of investment and, you know, guarantees that deal gives to Manchester United Football Club, they're very confident in it. But they've still not heard anything back from the Glazer family or Rain Group since there. And really now, it's really coming to a point where both parties, especially from the Sir Jim Ratcliffe side, because he confirmed it to the Sun, is he's prepared to wait. He's prepared to sit in. Now, the thing with Sheikh Yassim is he's not going to wait forever. And there is no time frame of when enough will be enough and they'll completely withdraw the offer from the table. But they really have already done that, if we're being honest. They've just left the table. The contract. They've really done what's happened with Man United with David De Gea. They've left the contract on the table, let the Glazer family sit on it for a little bit. And if you don't make your mind up in time, well, we'll just pull the offer away. And that's it. So really, they're doing what a lot of people maybe would do. And look, if that were to happen, the Glazer family can always fall back on the sword of, well, one of the parties pulled out. We didn't actually make the decision. The decision was made for us. And that sort of scenario, really, it's more of a Glazer family sort of thing, really. You aggravate and aggravate and aggravate both buyers, to the point where one of them pulls out and, oh, right, well, rather than us being painted out to be the bad guys because we went with Sir Jim or we went with Qatar or whatever, if it, blew up the fan base or anything, or maybe if both guys pulled out and then we keep control of the club and go with a minority investor, like, oh, well, the decision was already made for us by the fans and, by the reaction that we've got. We've never cared for 18 years, so why would we care now? So ultimately and overall, the update is that neither party's heard anything. The confidence that I said about last time is still there from the Sheikh Jassim side. And the Sir Jim Ratcliffe thing, really, as I've said before and I'll say again, when somebody has to come out publicly to back themselves up, it's never a good thing. I don't see it as anyway. And a lot of business insiders and experts have said, you let your finance do the talking, not your words. That's a saying that's always been kept with me when I've spoken to certain people is if you're going for a big, business transactional deal, you don't really need to come out publicly and say who you are, because people will know who you are if you're to be successful in buying, what you're trying to acquire. And that's why really with the Sheikh Yassim thing, really it's a contrast of two different personalities. You have Sheikh Yassim, who people thought was an AI and a ghost. They didn't even think that he was even real and existed. And then you have Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who blows up every 5 minutes and wants to do an interview or, turns up at Old Trafford in person, in the flesh, and, certain things like that. But regarding both parties, listen, nobody's heard anything from the Rain Group or the Glazer family. So Jim Ratcliffe confirmed publicly that he's prepared to sit around and wait for if the Glazer family wants to take him or not. But his delegation are still concerned around that they've not been given any communication or indication around their offer. So there is still a concern there from their camp. The Sheikh Jassim camp are the same thing. It's the fifth and final offer. We've put it on the table. We've pulled the communication, plugs out. If you want to speak to us around the offer, you come to us, and it's non-negotiable unless you pick us as preferred bidders or for a period of exclusive talks. Aside from any of that, there is really no major development and update. And as you say, G, when's it all going to be wrapped up? Don't know. I'm losing as much as Manchester United fans are having it. Really, I think after the takeover is really done, I think a lot of journalists will probably be following suit with such as Erik ten Hag and Pep Guardiola. Really, will be following the style. Really, probably either be going grey or we'll be losing a lot of split hairs in his hair, and I don't know, we might need hair transplants or something. I really don't know, but we're pulling his hair out really just as much as United fans are, because the way it's been marketed and it's been set up, it is like it's a joke. And as much as Sir Jim Ratcliffe can sit there, doing a post for the Sun newspaper, I'm pretty sure he'll be sitting there really when he's saying all these words, seething at how long this has taken. Sheikh Jassim will be doing the same thing in his multi-million-pound mansion back in Qatar. Indeed. Like they'll be doing the same thing just as much as Manchester United fans are. Indeed. And when the Glazer family need to do an interview or an update, where are they?
Indeed. Indeed.
Nowhere near.
Indeed. And I think I think Davis, Gragner, Sons, we just need to get these people out so we can get what we need to make the Magic get off and running. Exactly. When that will happen, I don't know, man. I don't know. And last comment before I go, Stephanie says the head's gone. And shout out to Richard. And last comment, Yasin Man says, big up all your. He's a City fan. It's a City fan. Fair enough. Okay. Shout out to Man City. At least if your Abby's anything to go by. Big up everyone. I believe Harry Kane is a good addition to Man United squad next season. He will bank 30 goals. So watching from Istanbul, Turkey. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you very much. It's although this is a United sort of fan channel, I'm always happy to have, and often our greatest supporters on this channel are non-Manchester United fans. So thank you so much for your input. I would love Harry Kane to come to Manchester United, but I just don't think as we discussed, he's going to be too expensive. Daniel Levy and sold to rivals, so likely if he's going to come to United, it will probably be next summer. Ten Hag has no hair left. His beard hair will start falling off. Well, it's looking like it, isn't it? Why Rio United gives hope? Well, ask Rio that. And lastly, Lucky says, Sheikh is in. We need UK talent to a Manchester club. Well, not overpriced UK talent. Right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, if you're on YouTube, to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter, United X, and smash the notification button. Make sure you check out Tom and follow Tom on Twitter at TomJournalist1. He is the GOAT journalist as far as I'm concerned, and is always willing to give his time to do these late shows to give us transfer updates as well as sales updates. So that's bye from us. Thank you for this show. We'll obviously back again, hopefully next week with more transfer news updates. Have a nice day, everyone, and cheers. Peace.